Okay, so the first half of this we're going to cover in about 35 minutes here is talking about writing and how we get a story. So how many of you are in a class where you produce stories or are going to be or want to be? I should see every single hand in this room go up. Good. Okay. So, and how many of you struggle with what to cover? What am I going to do? What stories am I going to tell? Most of you? Some of you? None of you? My intern has the problem. All right. Well, you've got to remember that, especially with your audience, and what I mean by that is the people that are watching your shows, the people in the classrooms, the people on your websites, whoever you're working for, everybody has a story to tell. For instance, what did you do this morning?
Got ready for work.
Okay.
Drove to work.
Okay, how was that drive?
Fine.
It was a good drive.
Yes.
That's surprising. It's kind of cold and there's bad drivers out there.
Yeah, but I go at a time where it's not a problem.
Because you have to or you want to?
Well, I go back roads.
Oh, does it take you longer to get to work?
Maybe a little bit. Well, it depends on if there's traffic on the freeway.
Gotcha. Right, okay. So, and
I'm kind of boring.
no, trust me, that's a good example. So you take the back roads because you choose to or you have to?
No, I choose to.
You choose to.
I don't go freeway.
All right, what I'm getting at there is that you have an audience, elementary school, especially for middle school and high schoolers, especially in high school because a lot of people will start to drive very soon. They're going to be getting their driver's license. So what you do there is take a character. What's your name again?
Julie.
You take Julie and you interview Julie about her awful commute to work. She takes the back roads because she knows traffic is going to be bad. When the weather is bad, she knows that there's going to be bad people on the road who can't drive very well. So she takes back roads. It takes her an extra 20 minutes to get to work, but it's better that way.
Or maybe I'm considerate because I'm the bad driver and don't want to cause everyone else.
Would you admit that on camera?
No.
Yeah, okay, yeah, exactly. So what I'm getting at there is maybe there's a story to tell all of those high school students, hey, by the way, just remember that when the weather gets bad, here's some driving tips. So there's really is a story in everything you do. You got to think about it though. There's sometimes a stretch, but it works. All right? I'm going to grab my rundown here so I don't get off topic too fast. Another great way to come up with story ideas, and we in the news business are horrible at this, are the follow-up stories. All right, so what I've tried to do, and I'm really trying hard, is whenever I do something, I actually write it on the calendar. I write what I did that day. For instance, let me think of a good story because of my audience is a little bit different than what news viewers are. Okay, so there was a woman who was arrested for abandoning a baby, right? Does anybody remember this story happened in Galt? Okay, so whatever happened to that baby? I don't know. But it certainly begs a follow-up, doesn't it? So when you're going through your days and you're working on your news stories, it certainly is not going to hurt just to keep a calendar of everything you're doing. So when you're in that slump next week thinking, what are the students going to do this week? What can we produce? Just go back and look at the calendar. Say, you know what? Remember we did that story about that woman and the baby? How's that baby doing? You've got an instant story right there, right? Okay. So we're talking about writing and compressing. How many of you have shot your own video at this point? How many of you want to? Okay, we'll get there. All right, so does everybody know what B-roll is? Who doesn't know what B-roll is? Okay. B-roll is video that doesn't have a talking head. Does that make sense? It's not an interview. It's not a soundbite. It's just the video of an event. So when you go to if you go to recess and you shoot video of kids playing during recess, that video is called B-roll. All right, if you interview somebody during recess and you see them on camera, that's called A-roll. And there's a specific term, and we can, if you want to talk about it afterwards, I'll tell you why it's A and B-roll, but just remember what B-roll is, because it's important in the writing process. So everybody grab your packets there. I want you to open the second one. And at the top, it says 907, Lord, I pray for Robert. This falls in the what not to do category. How many of you, when producing your videos, sit down ahead of time and draw out storyboards or draw out ideas or draw out what we want this video to look like, or this is what we're thinking we're going to do? We do storyboards? Oh, shame on you. That's what not to do. I'll tell you why. In our business anyway, and it should be something you should consider doing, we know we have an event to cover, we know we have a story we're going to cover, but if I sit down and talk about how I want that story to be and what I'm going to do with it and what I'm going to write and how I want it to look, that kind of handcuffs me, doesn't it? What if I know that at the board meeting tonight, there's going to be a girl who's getting an award for saving her classmate's life. She did the Heimlich and she saved him. So we're going to go there and we're going to cover that, right? So we do a storyboard and we say, okay, I want to open with this shot and I want to interview her and we're going to use this process and we're going to edit it. What happens during the meeting if all of a sudden that little boy who she saved shows up? We didn't know he was going to be there.
You'd be flexible.
You would have to be flexible, right?
Yeah.
So you kind of wasted an entire process of storyboarding all this. Maybe they knew he was going to be there, but they forgot to tell us, right?
Then it's not your fault.
No, it's not our fault. There's nothing wrong with it. But what we're saying is that never have a preconceived notion of what your story is going to be. It's okay to have an idea of what I want this to look like, and it's okay if we want the story to go in a certain direction, but don't waste your time storyboarding all these things out because you're going to have to be flexible anyway. There's no point in drawing exactly what we want this to look like if we know it's going to change in the end. Yes?
It's like sometimes like you get everything already, and sometimes you'll get everything already, and then there's like a surprise, and then you wasted like an hour planning it to make another one.
Right. Yeah. I can't tell you how many times something changes in the course of my day. Dozens of times. We can't waste time doing any storyboards. So for those of you who are going to be working on news stories, don't have a preconceived notion of exactly how this is going to turn out, because that gives you the freedom to do what you want with the story. And we're going to show you an example of how that works. Okay, I showed you this log. At the top it says 907, Lord, I pray for Robert. Once you have shot your story, I should spend more time on this room. Hi, everybody. Hi, everybody. All right. Once you've shot your story, what do you do? Anybody? And who has the microphone? Jim's got it. Okay.
Like you have to like edit it to make sure that there's like no mistakes.
Yes.
Then you have to upload it.
You have to upload. You've got to ingest and capture the footage into your editor, right? It sounds like we're missing a key process in all of this, and the hint is in your hand. Yes.
Like in order to actually make a story, you need the story. You need to like, find a story or something.
Well, we already have the story. We know what the story is. We've shot the story. Yeah, bud. You have to catalog it. You have to catalog it. That's exactly right. In our world, we call it logging, and that's exactly what you're looking at right here. This is a story, and you may have seen it on Facebook or on News 10, about a girl who goes to William Jessup, who's had a hard life and wanted to rent a family for the holidays. All right? What you're looking at is the log of that story. What we mean by log, and what I want you guys to do, or at least consider doing, is when you get back to school the next day or after your shoot is over, I want you to sit down in front of your computer and type out what you have. See those numbers in front of all these things? 907, 926, 955. That's called time code. Who knows what time code is? Who doesn't? All right. Time code is the number that's embedded in your video, but you don't see it. But you do see it in your editor. If you're using iMovie or Final Cut Pro, there's always a little window somewhere on your computer screen that has rolling numbers. Whenever you press play, you see them scrolling, right? Okay? That number never changes no matter where you put that thing. It's called time code. So what you can do, and what we do here, is we sit down and we write out what shots are great, what B-roll is great, what sound bites turned out really good. Because the interviews can last 15 or 20 minutes, right? Maybe. Hopefully not, because that's a long time. But the interview, you want to go through there and say, that was good, this was good, that was good. I can see how I can use this, and start writing them out. You log it. When you finish logging your story, now you can write it. I know a lot of people, or I should say some people, who write their story before they even log anything. But do you see how you can get into trouble with that? If you write before you know what you have, if you write before you know what sound bites you're going to use or want to use, your story isn't as good. Think about it. Who can tell me what this is? Who can tell me? Yeah, what is this? This is my script. So I took that log, and then I was able to write this script based on my log. Think of it as a jigsaw puzzle. How could you possibly put your puzzle together if you don't know what pieces you have? Does that make sense? Look at where it says, I want to say about 3/4 of the way down, 5116 on the outside, it looks like I'm the American Dream Kid. Everybody see that? I was able to write this story, and I knew I was going to use that soundbite. That was kind of how I framed my entire story. This story, again, was about a girl who's had a very hard life. I started it by saying, using a little gnat sound here. Who knows what gnat sound is? No, who doesn't? Okay, natural sound is the audio that is recorded. That's not the interview. So if I've got a camera and I'm shooting Recess again, all the children screaming and playing and laughing, you hear that in the background, that's called natural sound. It was recorded naturally. It's happening naturally. All right, you want to use those moments. And here, when I was shooting Jackie Turner, the student in class, William Jessup, by the way, is a Christian university. You probably know that's why they're praying and things like that. So I heard her say, Lord, I pray for Robert. Lord, I pray that you would strengthen him. I thought, you know, that would be a really good way to open up this story and kind of set the scene for people. Let them know this is where we're at. People need to understand what's happening. Where is this taking place? And natural sound is the best way to do that. It's the same way, think about it this way. If you've got video of a horrible car accident, all right, but you don't hear the crash, the boom, the glass breaking. It sounds kind of weird, doesn't it? It's just like you're missing something. You're missing natural sound. What's our next process? What do we do now? Yes? Perfect. We have to narrate it. We have to record our voice. That's what you're going to do when you're writing your stories. And all of you who have done video have probably done some kind of voiceover work, right? You record your voices? Yeah? Okay. What we want to talk about here is what we in the business called intonation. Anybody follow where we're going to go with this one? Okay. I need a volunteer. Let's make it an adult. Where's one of our teachers? Come on up here. Round of applause. All right, we're putting you on the spot here. You can do this, right?
Of course.
Yes, you can. Okay. Here's your script. Come on over here. Okay, so everybody follow along here. What we're talking about here is intonation. Good ways to read your script. So, I want you to read, if you happen to miss a sign, the conversation's inside. Read those 2 lines, skip that we're looking at a perfect Christ. Okay, so just read those 2 lines.
Okay.
If you happen to miss the sign outside, do I just keep going with the next one? Okay. The conversations inside make it clear that William Jessup University is founded on faith.
One more line after laughing gnats.
It's a place that the jovial Jackie Turner never expected to be.
Good job. Round of applause. Why did you read that like that?
Because it sounds like never expected to be. We have something good coming up. You have to have a little da-da-da.
Right? Yeah. You've got to have some drama. You've got to have, okay. Now, when I've been a judge for your SEVAs a couple of times, all right? And sometimes I'll get a piece of video, and whoever read it like this. If you happen to miss the sign outside, the conversations inside make it clear that William Jessup University is founded on faith. Who's bored? Right? A lot better if we say, if you happen to miss the sign outside, the conversations inside make it clear that William Jessup University is founded on faith.
You did it
No, you did a good job. You did a really good job. Thank you so much. You can sit down. I'll take your microphone now. All right, so when we talk about intonation, I want you guys to really focus on that, and that's one of the number one things here. When you're recording your voice tracks, keep in mind the intonation. Keep in mind, we call it a roller coaster. I want you to go up and down. I want you to tell me a story, not just read something to me. Tell me a story. And when you do that, I promise you your videos are going to be so much better. And people are really going to be engaged, and they're going to care, and they're going to want to listen and pay attention. Because honestly, and let's be honest, how many people tune out once in a while when a video is on? Why? Because you're bored? Can we fix that? Can we fix that with the way that we read it? Yes, we can. Intonation, very, very important for us to do. Okay, one other thing that I want you guys to consider when you're writing your stories, and then we'll do a couple of examples here. A great way to help write your stories is writing in and out of your sound bites. And this is another reason that we log. So let's look at the fourth to last paragraph on that first log page. I want you to write down, write into your sound bite. Write into your sound bite. We talk about the puzzle pieces. We talk about writing things so the whole thing comes together. A very easy way to do that, and you guys are going to think this is so awesome when you leave here. Jackie is an out-of-the-box thinker. She's always looking for a unique way. So that's a soundbite from her professor. In my package, what if I were to say, and Jackie's professors say she has always been an out-of-the-box thinker. Soundbite start. She's always looking for a unique way to focus attention. Say we took just the first thought or first sentence in that soundbite and we made it our own, and how well it flows in to that soundbite now, because we just chopped off a part of it, we truncated it, and made a mesh together. You guys follow me what I'm talking about? Yeah. Who's confused? Anybody confused? Yeah. Well, you just said you followed me. I'm so confused now. Okay. Well, that's a great question. Is that plagiarism? No. No, it's not, because it's not a fact, and we're not stealing something. You're just kind of continuing their thought a little bit. And they'll actually like you because you did it, because it makes them look that much better. We talked about not storyboarding your videos. But I also said it's okay to have a focus. Does anybody know what the difference is? Yes?
Focus is more like if you're picturing it, being a storyboard is literally...
Is exactly what it's supposed to be, right? Yeah, that's exactly what it is. Yeah, a focus is like a theme you're thinking about having in a story. And some of you have seen this, some of you haven't. There has been, and this is in no way to disparage these stories, but there has been thousands of stories of military servicemen and women coming home, right? Have you seen this one?
No, but I taught a lesson today on PTSD, and our stories all about military.
So how many of you have probably seen a story on the news about mom or dad returning home, right? And there's always that great shot of them coming down the escalator and everybody starts crying, and it's a really good story, right? So I was working with the photographer, his name was Dave, and we were assigned to go cover this story. And we got there, and Dave and I are thinking, boy, this is an awesome story, but it's the same story, right? I mean, it's the same thing over and over. Nothing against these folks, but it's just the same thing over and over again. Well, then we got there, and we met his daughter. And then we realized there was a great story to tell just using her instead.
We have been counting down for weeks.
If for whatever reason you need to see what suspense looks like,
So exciting.
you should have seen 4-year-old Sydney.
Who's coming home, Sydney?
Dad.
Daddy's homecoming means even more, though, because it almost didn't happen.
My heart stopped. I didn't know what to think. I didn't know what to do. U.S.
Army Corporal Jairus Perez leads a special team in Afghanistan. Last week, that team was attacked with an improvised explosive device. Shrapnel hit Perez in the arm and the hip, just inches from his grenade.
When I heard his voice, I knew my boy's okay.
So sure, it was a setback, but nothing was going to keep him from his grandma, his mother, his brother, and certainly not the camouflage boots filled by the youngest love of his life.
It was shocking. I just seeing all you guys, all the support and stuff. It was great. It was great to see her. She's gotten big. It's just I'm at a loss for words, really.
Daddy have an owie?
Yeah. Say yeah.
And a Purple Heart too, huh?
Oh yeah, that's the second reason this homecoming was so special. Just days before shipping home, Perez was given that Purple Heart and maybe to come, a medal for bravery. Minutes after that explosion, while they were still being attacked, Perez found an unconscious comrade and pulled him to safety.
Made sure he wasn't bleeding anywhere. And then I said, hey, look at me. My hip kind of hurts. And he took a quick glance at me and told me I was bleeding. I was like, all right, cool. Put a Band-Aid on. Let's go.
Love you.
So kiss by kiss, Jairus will ease back into civilian life, but only for 2 weeks because he says there's a job that needs to be done, even if that means more suspense in the place he'd much rather be.
It's just good to be home. It's really good to be home.
Sacramento International Airport, Nick Monacelli, News 10. Got a couple of criers already, huh? That's okay. All right, so you see what I mean by finding a focus and finding a theme to a story? How many of you, or how many, if you were assigned, would have had your camera on that escalator waiting for him to come down? Be honest with me, right? How much cooler was it to see things from her perspective and running up to him? That was kind of cool, wasn't it? And how many of you would have started the story with him coming down that escalator? That's where our story starts. How much cooler was it to have a whole story about the anticipation and the waiting and what they're going through, and we're so excited, and I didn't know if he was dead or alive. There's always a different way to tell a story if you just talk about it and find your theme. Don't storyboard it, but find your focus and find your theme ahead of time. Another tool or trick for you to use while you're writing your stories is something we call gold coins in the forest. Has anybody heard this phrase before? What it means is we want our viewers to go on a journey. It's another reason that you can maintain their attention, because again, we tend to lose people. They tune out, they get bored. But if you surprise them with little things along the way, then they're always going to be intrigued by what it is you're telling them. In this example I'm going to show you is how we used that concept throughout an entire story to always keep you hooked, and you're always learning something new and you never get bored, even though it's a story that's usually much longer than
You're watching News 10 at 5.
A Northern California band might yet get the chance that they've been hoping for thanks to their neighbors. That band really was offered the chance to take part in a major event, the 70th anniversary commemoration of the attack on Pearl Harbor.
The problem, it is a poor community without the money to send the kids, or so they thought. News 10's Nick Monacelli joins us now with the story of a community banding together.
Well, the small town of Gridley is barely on the map, in between Yuba City and Chico, but the hearts of the people in that community are anything but small, and because of them, and really because of the people all the way down to Stockton, their dreams are coming true. There is something to be said about a small town, the way its people seem to band together to help someone else in need. But in this case, it is something in need, made up of several someones.
I never dreamed that we would get an opportunity to do something like this.
1, 2, 3, John Harble is the band director at Gridley High School, and last year got phenomenal news. Gridley was one of 4 schools in the state to perform in Pearl Harbor on the 70th anniversary.
My first thought was, should I even tell them? Because of that reason. I just thought, there's no way.
That reason was the money. Added up, it would cost $124,000 to go, close to $1,500 per student, in a town where the unemployment rate is 30%. 50% of the families live at or below the poverty line, and 70% of the students here get free or reduced lunches.
You have to lower the instrument down and roll it in.
So at their next rehearsal, Mr. Harble told the students this is a great opportunity we simply cannot afford.
1, 2, 3, 4.
But the students had other plans.
We just did a easy car wash, easy. And we made $600 in one day.
Drum major Lauren Coca says the game was on. It would take every single minute of every single day to raise $124,000, but every student was up to the challenge.
There was car washes, performances with choir, and bake sales sometimes. We went around selling tickets for plays.
Soon, the word got out, and that's when this small town showed its community pride. The local t-shirt shop sold shirts. The town bar owner donated. Even the city itself gave $3,000. And within 7 months, the town with a 30% unemployment rate raised $124,000.
It was clear from Reading and Chester down to Lodi and Stockton. The checks have come in. The little old lady sends in a check, and what does she say at the bottom of the letter? She says, "I'm sorry I couldn't send more."
These people want so much for us to not forget the past and to honor everybody that sacrificed their lives for this country. Especially when they said that they're sorry that they can't send more. I just don't think they understand how grateful we really are.
So the next time you are faced with what seems to be an impossible task, remember that high school band from that tiny town whose band room doubles as the school cafeteria.
A lot of us have never even been out of California. So to make it all the way across seas to perform, little tiny band from Gridley, it's incredible. Good job.
Besides marching in a parade, performing in Pearl Harbor, the kids... Okay, what did you guys think? Do you now see what I mean by dropping gold coins and taking people on a journey and telling them something new as we go? Did that make sense to you? I mean, what did we learn as we started this story? Yes? It was about a band, and they had a problem, but we really didn't know what the problem was. Well, we told it. Yeah? Go ahead.
That how they got it, and that they did get it, and to never give up.
To never get up, right? So if I had the script for you, you would have seen that as we went through that, you learned something new. Oh, they have a phenomenal opportunity. But the band director didn't even want to tell them. My God, what could it be? Oh, they have a 30% unemployment rate? Oh, it was good. Oh. I mean, you kept learning something each and every time. And then even at the end, what surprise did we have at the very end for you? Yeah.
They got the $124,000 and they did what they wanted to do.
That's exactly right. And then at the very end, we showed you that this tiny school, their band room, is also the school cafeteria. I mean, even that kind of gives you a better idea of what kind of small town and small school we're dealing with, right? All right, we've got some special guests. I asked Dale and Christina to come in and say hi. Hi, Dale and Christina. But who has a question for them?
How do you get not nervous before you talk in front of all of your viewers?
I think if you do it long enough,
I used to get nervous when I first started in this business. Every time I'd be on camera, I'd be a little nervous. Just wanted to make sure all the words came out of my mouth okay and that people understood what I was saying. And then as you do it, just like whatever sport you do or whatever you like to do in your spare time, the more you do it, the more comfortable you get at it.
We actually call the studio our cone of happiness. We enjoy sometimes going into that studio for 30 minutes because sometimes all the chaos and the hubbub is out in the newsroom. And so we like to get in the studio because we can be there together. And you're right, after doing it for so many years, when you look at that camera, sometimes you think of all the people that you've met in your career and the nice things that they've said to you, and you just feel like you're talking to your friends. It's actually sometimes quite comforting. When there's breaking news and things are happening behind the scenes, and then it can be a little bit of nervousness, but for the most part, it's actually pretty comfortable. Yeah. Well, it's a little both. We have a teleprompter that has the script rolling in front of the lens, and so we're reading that teleprompter. And if there's a trick to anchoring, it's reading but making it sound conversational, just like I'm talking to you. But we don't read word for word, and talent coaches will tell you, don't read the prompter word for word. Kind of change things up. Put it in, move words around. Put it in our own style of speaking. So even though these words are coming in front of the camera lens, we're not reading every one word. In stories, probably every story I just read, I added words, took words out, changed things around. So you're kind of using it more or less as a guide as to, like reading it word for word.
And we've looked at those stories usually 3 or 4 times before we see them on set. So when we're back in the newsroom at our desk, we copy at it. So we go through everything a few times, make sure all the questions are answered and grammatically it sounds correct. So we've seen those stories, so we're very familiar with them by the time we get out to the set.
Yeah, and just one other thing too. YouTube is full of videos of anchor teams in other markets where, maybe the anchor's tossed to a live shot and then the live shot goes down and the camera comes back on the anchors, and it's like, the anchors should know enough about that story that just went down that we can continue to ad-lib it and basically tell the story. Just say, hey, I'm sorry we lost Nick in the field there, but here's what's going on, yada, yada, yada.
Why'd you have to lose me in the field?
Well, it never happens because it's Nick's fault. It happens because it's a technical problem. So Christina and I think know all of the stories in the newscast well enough that if the prompter goes down, if a live shot goes down, we can ad-lib a little bit. I had a news director when I worked in Dallas say, I don't pay you to go out there and just read the teleprompter or read the glass. I pay you to go out there and hold the newscast together when things are falling apart and sit there and talk to the viewers and sound like you know what you're talking about. Yeah.
When you're reading the teleprompter and you read a word, because you don't read it word for word, have you ever brain farted and forgot something what you're about to say because you've changed it up?
Well, the teleprompter's there to kind of keep you on a guide. So it's kind of like a guide wire. So, we can't really forget stuff because it's there. So we might change it or edit it as we're reading. But, of course, early in our careers, we both have brain farted sometimes. If perhaps we forget a name of someone we're tossing to. Sometimes a reporter out in the field has not put their name in. And if it's a new reporter, we might have forgotten their name. I did that the other night. Not the other night. Well, when Tom Jensen first got here, our investigative reporter, I said, News 10 investigative reporter, and his name wasn't there. And all I could remember was Tom. So I said, Tom. And then I tossed to him. And you know what? You have an understanding, and I think the viewers have an understanding that once in a while those mistakes are going to happen. You just don't make a big deal out of them. You get back up and keep going.
Where it's more likely to we're more likely to have a brain fart is when we field anchor, because we're out in the field. We have cameras on us. We don't have teleprompters, and yet viewers still expect that we're going to look right into that camera, talk to them, and tell them the story. And that's where we try to know all of these stories well enough that we can just look right into that camera and talk to that story, and whether we're introing another reporter or just telling the whole story. And that's where you might have 5 points of that story that I want to rattle off, and maybe you forget the third one or something. And that's where writing stories, especially when you're ad-libbing like that, if you kind of write it where the first sentence flows into the second, into the third, into the fourth, it makes it a lot easier just ad-libbing those stories because you yourself in your own mind kind of know where that story is going. But yeah, it's when we're out field anchoring and you have no teleprompter, that's when you can have the occasional brain fart.
And as an anchor, you have your arms around the entire newscast. As a reporter, you're doing one story. And as a reporter, I always tried to remember 3 things to tell the viewers before I would toss to my story. And that's how I did it as a reporter, to remember it. But as an anchor, the newscast is too big to memorize it all.
All right, one more question, and then it's dinner time. Gosh, why do I have to do this?
One of the guys back there?
Yeah, let's go.
So during a news story out in the field, away from the studio, what is it like? What is it like when people like kind of interrupt like the story with like doing like peace signs and everything, just interrupting?
Oh, they mess with you.
Yeah.
They mess
with
with
you.
you. That's
it
happened
like
to all of us. Definitely.
What is it like?
It's you want to keep your train of thought. You're constantly aware that what you're talking about and what's happening around you is being transmitted home. So, I mean, if you're out in a crowded situation like covering a sports event where the team has just won and people are pouring out of the arena and they're behind you, and maybe some of them have had too much alcohol, you have to have your photographer keep an eye out for you. So if I have my back and all these people are pouring out, the photographer will keep their eye out for me and kind of alert me to what's happening around me. Sporting events, I think, are the toughest ones to cover because you have fans who are willing just to jump in front of the camera and everything. And we've had situations where reporters have been completely crowded out of their live shot.
That happened to me in Oakland.
Yeah, that's right. That happened to you in Oakland.
Yeah. No, well, and that's where YouTube moments happen. I've had, when I worked in Dallas and after a big Cowboys playoff game, I guess it was a Philadelphia fan or somebody who was there jumped in front of me with a bad word written on a sign. And sometimes the stuff is going on behind you. You're glued on that camera and you don't know what's going on behind you, and there can be weird things happening that you're not even aware of, which makes us look kind of silly because viewers are seeing it at home and maybe laughing at what's going on behind us, and we're like, the reporter looks oblivious, but so you don't almost want to turn around and see what's happening. But those situations are kind of dangerous, especially when you're in a crowd of people and maybe some of them have been drinking. Oh, this is too much fun. Is there another question? This is more fun than getting ready for the young man back there. Yeah.
So how do you like transitions from news stories to other news stories?
You mean like if they're sad or happy or?
If you have like two news stories that you're talking about, and without having them running into each other and talking about them in like almost the same, section, how do you stop them from running into each other?
I mean, a lot of that is left up to the producer to, you don't want to make a hard turn where you're coming out of a story that's maybe fun or funny, and then the next story is about some tragedy. But sometimes that happens, and we just need to be aware of the story flow. And sometimes the producer will get in our ear, even as we're reading, that last maybe happy story, and they'll just say, careful, sad story coming up next. I mean, just to remind us, don't be laughing too much at the end of this story because we're going into a tragedy next. But that's kind of, producers try to avoid those situations. Or it's easier to do if, I read, one story and then Christina reads the next one. So it's not like us sitting there together having a fun moment about a happy story and then having to go right into it. So you can kind of make that transition visually as well as anything too.
And you'll notice graphically as well. Sometimes there'll be like a swoosh and a graphic that pops up that says breaking news. Well, we'll read the breaking news, and there might be another graphic swoosh that pops up that talks about weather, and then we're going to be transitioning to weather. So they can do that graphically as well.
Yeah. All right, thank you so much for coming in. Appreciate it. They're back on the air in 20 minutes, so we got to let them go and read their next scripts. So there are two more concepts I want to talk about real fast when it comes to writing your story, and then we'll move into shooting. The first one is about number association. And this is a quick concept. It's easy to grasp. When you're writing, again, let's say we're doing a story about a 6th grader who is entering a ball throwing competition. And he goes, and he was able to throw the ball 400 yards. I know, right? That's a long way, isn't it? Or is it? I mean, how long is 400 yards? It's very long. It seems like a long way. I don't remember. So when we write our stories, do we say he was able to throw the ball 400 yards, or do we say he was able to throw the ball the length of 4 football fields? Right? The interesting way, because now your audience, your classmates, whoever it is that was watching your video, they can understand, oh, that was really far, not make them think about how far that was. Make sense? Okay. And one more thing. Who thinks emotion is good? Who thinks emotion is bad? Who thinks it doesn't matter?
Emotion or motion?
Emotion.
Oh.
Who thinks it depends on what we're talking about? Who thinks emotion is only crying? What we're getting at here is two things. I'll get to you guys in just a second. Number one, emotion is actually a great tool to tell stories, whether it be joy or sadness or fear or anger or anything. Those are all emotions that are all okay. And number two, characters are key. And if you've got your pens out, write that down. Characters are key. In the story about the little girl, what made you care about that story? It was the little girl, right? I mean, suddenly we understand her, we know her, we care about the story because she was a great character. In the Gridley story, we care about the story because this band major had a great idea, and the band instructor wasn't sure if he should tell them. These are people that we can relate to. And when you can relate to who's in your story, your audience will care more. They will care and they will respond and they will associate with what's going on. You can tell a story about a food shelter in downtown Sacramento that is running out of food, or you can tell a story about a woman who has 3 kids and is a single mother and doesn't know what she's going to do because the food shelter is running out of food. Make sense? Use people. Stories are about people. They are not about things. Every single story that I tell on the news affects somebody. And if I can find that person who is affecting, you at home will care more. Got it? Any questions? Yes.
Wait,
no.
No. Like,
Come.
yes. Like, no, as in, this isn't a question.
Okay.
Okay. But, like, when you're telling a story and you, like, use emotion and stuff, if you tell the story, like, good and stuff, will, like, it can, like, make the person that's hearing the story or reading it, like, feel like they're in the story.
Well, and that is a perfect setup for what I want to show you. Emotion is a great tool to tell your stories for 2 reasons. Number 1, it helps you connect with the people. And number 2, you start to feel something at home. Sometimes. Especially with the sadness part of things. All right, and think about stories that you've seen on the news or on Facebook, and think about things that you go to work and tell somebody about the next day. Oh my God, I saw this amazing story. It's sad, but it was, you know, it's just something that sticks with you. And emotion, let's talk after we show this. Emotion is one of those things that's always going to stick with you. This is a story, and I'm only going to show you part 2 of it because it kind of wraps things up fairly well, about a girl in Auburn who is 23, and her father was dying of cancer. She did a very strange thing and requested that they make a fake wedding so her dad can share that experience of having a daddy-daughter dance. Anybody remember seeing this one? All right, so I'm going to turn it on. And just a side note, and this is just something for those of you who are thinking about getting into the news later, or for you teachers to talk to your students about, to always remember the impactfulness and the power that news organizations can sometimes have. And I'm not saying that on a, you know, look at me who I am kind of thing, but this story we did, I went and shot it on a Friday, I think it was, and I met this girl, Rachel, and I heard her story, and we decided that we were going to help. She needed a dress, she needed a venue, she needed a limo, she needed flowers, she needed everything that it kind of takes to pull off a wedding. And for those of you teachers in here who are married, you know what it's like to pull off a wedding, right? I mean, it's not easy. It takes a year at least of planning. I made, I don't remember how many phone calls, it wasn't that many. In 45 minutes, I had a dress, a limo, a florist, a DJ, a venue, all lined up. Done. Because we called. So just remember, again, for those of you who are thinking about doing this, going into this as a career, that you're in a powerful role. And never abuse that, never forget it, and always use it for good when you can. You are a member of this community. And use what you've got in front of you. Use your tools to force change.
It's a little sad because it is going to be our last dance together, possibly. So I think that's kind of sinking in a little bit.
The veil, the dress, the makeup, the gazebo, it was all perfect. The only thing missing was a groom.
But that's okay. There wasn't supposed to be one. This daddy-daughter dance was just for them. Because when it comes time for the real thing, Daddy is not going to be there.
News 10's Nick Monacelli is here with a follow-up story an entire community has been waiting for. Nick?
Yeah, Simney, it started with a dream, a crazy idea to give Rachel and her dying father a chance to share one of those moments many daddies and daughters do. What it turned into was one of the best nights of their lives.
Rachel Rose Wolf is requesting the pleasure.
To say 25-year-old Rachel Wolf has a vivid imagination would be an understatement.
I hope he likes it. I hope he doesn't get mad.
But to say that desperate times call for desperate measures, well, that sums up this story best.
Hi, you almost here?
The person almost here is Rachel's dad, Dr. James Wolf. He's the one facing desperate times. He's losing his battle with pancreatic cancer and is most afraid of what he'll miss out on.
Because I'm saddened over the fact that I won't be there for the events of her life, and that's been difficult on me.
So even though she isn't engaged, Rachel has a special invitation. In less than 10 days, the community helped pull off a fake wedding.
It was like just on a random with like those arms, you know, and you're like, Daddy! Movie star.
A few miles down the road, friends, family, strangers, even patients of the once named Doctor of the Year were waiting.
It's really an honor to be in all of your lives, and I'm so thankful that you all came. It's a dream. It's an absolute dream. Hi, honey, you look gorgeous.
I love you, Daddy.
I love you. I love you, Rachel. Let's go dance, okay?
I picked this song out for you.
Oh, thanks.
She spins and she sways to whatever song plays.
Will you spin me?
Would you like to be spun right now?
Yes.
Dance with Cinderella while she's here in my arms.
Thank you so much, Daddy, for coming to this.
Oh, I wouldn't have missed it. I wouldn't have missed it.
He almost did miss it, though. James was in the hospital getting a blood transfusion that morning. He's no longer on chemotherapy, so if he's lucky, his doctors say he may have another 3 months.
It was an amazing moment.
That said, James is not afraid of dying, and he says he will not miss his girls because he'll always be there. The girls, on the other hand...
There's missing. There's lots of missing. Lots of missing. Lots.
I love you, Dad.
I love you too, sweetheart.
And she'll
always be around. I want you to know that.
Okay.
Not much more to say.
I've never seen a more beautiful wedding dance. I will say that.
It was amazing to see the turnout that night. I don't know how people found out about it. Obviously, they saw our story, but there had to be 50 or 60 people there who just showed up just because. And there was a receiving line of people that were just there to say thank you to the doctor for all that he has done in the community. He's been in there for 25 years. And our story aired about a week and a half ago, and that's when we decided to get involved and see what we could do. And we really do have to thank a lot of people. I've got a list here. The Auburn Recreation District are the ones who donated the gazebo. DreamNet Bridal out of Roseville, they gave the dress. Mad Hatters gave the tuxedo. Milestones DJ, obviously they were the DJ. BP Productions, they did all that gorgeous lighting and then the drapery in the gazebo there. They called us. RMW for photo that took some of those beautiful shots that you saw there. Baja Limo gave that limo you see right there. Vision Salon did the hair and the nails. Vista Floor, and a girl named Rhonda who isn't a florist but does it on the side, called and said, I really want to do some flowers. And Sabrina's makeup, did the makeup for her. Just incredible to see what a community can do in such a small amount of time. 9 days from when we aired the story to the time where this all happened. It was one of the highlights. In fact, James told me afterwards that it was one of the best nights of his life, knowing that he has weeks, if not months, left to live.
Seemed like a very beautiful family and so deserving
They
of
really
all that
are.
support from the
They
community.
really are.
And we thank them for sharing the story. It's a very personal moment. Nick, thanks.
Everybody okay? Just keep in mind what emotion can do. How many of you are crying? How many of you are feeling something right now? Yeah. Emotion is a powerful tool. And again, use it for good. Don't exploit it. Okay, let's transition to something happy, shall we? Okay, let's talk about shooting. I know that's why a lot of you came. It's on the board. We talked about logging and ingesting. We talked about why that's important. But when you compose your video and when you compose your shots, you know what I mean by compose? The way you set up the camera to shoot your pictures? Who's heard of the rule of thirds? How many of you use it? Aha! Okay. Erica, have a seat. Wow, okay. So we're doing an interview with Erica, right? She's got a microphone on, and I'm the one interviewing her, and she's looking at me right now. How's that shot look? Just looks bad, right? Yeah. All right. Well, what about that? Who likes it? Who doesn't? Who thinks it's okay? All right. Who doesn't again? You're my winners. All right. There's something called the rule of thirds. Many of you know about it. There are 3 or 6 panes, if you want to, on every television screen. 1, 2, 2, which makes 3 boxes. So 1, 2, and 3. All right? Yes. Rule of thirds. Yep. All right. It says to use boxes 1 or 3. 1 or 3. Never use 2. She's framed very bad right now. All right. So if we want to put her in box 3, we do this. All right. See how when she's looking at me, there we go. There's room over here, okay? But there's not empty space on the screen. But remember, you've got to consider where they're looking. So if I put her in box 1, doesn't look right, does it? She's in a box. She's not in the middle of the screen, but she's not looking the right way. All right, so flip. Other way.
Sorry, this way.
Yep. See what a difference that makes? So if they're in 1, have them look towards 2 and 3. If they're in 3, have them look towards 1 and 2. Make sense? We're all there? Okay. Now I want to talk about wide, medium, and tight shots. What kind of shot is that right there? Yes. Well, is it wide, medium, or tight? Medium. Medium, medium. Good, okay. What's a wide shot look like? Like that. But notice I'm still using the rule of thirds here. Okay, and then a tight shot. Whoa, that's too tight. That's a good tight shot, but still use your rule of thirds. See, that looks pretty good, doesn't it? Also, headroom. I can't tell you how many of you shoot enough video that I can fly a 747 over the top of somebody. All right? This is no good. It is A-okay to have your shot composed like that. It's okay to cut off a little bit of the top of their head or have a tiny little bit of headroom up there. I don't want to see all this space. Again, and I'm not disparaging against any of you folks here, but I can't tell you how many times I have seen an interview with somebody up against a white wall or up against the blackboard in the classroom. All right, listen, guys, it looks bad. I know it, you know it, everybody at home knows it. I don't know why we do it. It's easy, right? Because I don't have to worry about what's happening in the background, and it's simple. Let's not take the easy road anymore. Let's make things look good. For instance, Erica, sit there for me. Okay. Excellent. Okay. So I'm going to frame her shot good. All right, she's framed nice and everything. She's a lot of focus. I can fix that. Okay. So I'm doing a story about this really cool workshop they're doing here. I'm going to interview one of the people who was here, and she's going to tell me what a fantastic job I did and how amazing it was, and she learned so much. But gee whiz, that's a really boring shot, isn't it? But how many of you people use this? You just put them up against a wall. Mm-hmm. How much better would it be if I did, I don't know, this? Okay, now, I only use this example because I'm limited by my cables, but the background is better, right? Okay, if I had enough cable, I probably would have taken her over here and put my camera over here. And can anybody tell me why I would do that? Yes?
So like the people, this would be in the background?
Well, it's more interesting behind, right? That's why we moved the shot over here, because it's not plain and boring. But number two is called compression, okay? Not what we see on the board, a different form of compression. Let's see if I can do it. Can you stand up for me?
Try to get that back in.
Exactly. Okay. All right. Okay, now aside from the horrible angle, because I wish the camera was a little bit taller, because I hate looking down at people. You never want to do that because it exposes whatever double chins they have or whatever.
What are you trying to say?
Not you. All right. But notice how the things that are behind her start to go a little out of focus. All right. That's called depth of field, compression shots. When the camera, and if I had the space, I could pull this camera back even further. Actually, take a couple steps back for me. Okay, it's really tight on her, and I don't like that shot, but just for training purposes, do you see what's happening behind her there? See this? Depth of field, compression shots. See, now that is a cool background, right? Utilize that. All your classrooms, thank you so much, you can sit down. All of your classrooms are fairly long. I know that most are narrow, but many of you have a decent open space. It's very easy to put somebody in the middle of it, put your camera way back there, and zoom in, and you'll get this nice kind of out of focus, blurry background behind them. It looks really great. It's so much better than your walls. Yes?
I remember when I was watching my friend Kiara, she was filming out in the fields at recess, and there's all these, my voice. There's all these kids playing football and soccer, and it looked really cool as background.
Yes, absolutely. Go ahead. Pass the microphone too.
Also, like, maybe if the interview gets kind of boring or stuff, like, so if, like, the background is blurry, but you can still, like, look at the background, so it'll be cool, too.
Right.
So it's not all boring.
Right, right. Let me get your microphone.
Is there ever time that you would use a plain background to use as an effect? Because I have students who are working on a PSA and they're doing it on teen suicide, so they're purposely doing it so the focus is on them, so that it doesn't really show anything in the background? Or is it, should they still do it on something maybe just less busy?
I would do it on something less busy, and I would certainly use this depth of field, this compression, because if you can find enough space, what will happen is whatever is going on behind them will go just completely out of focus. So the focus will stay on them, people won't get distracted, but it's still much better than that blank wall, right? Because it just looks so blah.
Like when I've seen interviews where the cameraman zooms in and zooms out.
Okay.
And for the plain wall, couldn't you use a green screen to like
Sure.
change the setting if you don't have like enough room in other places?
Well,
Could you use a green screen?
it depends on the story you're working on, right? So, you know, you really don't want to. First of all, you don't want to take people out of the element. If I'm doing a story about recess, I want my interview to take place somewhere near recess. I want that to be my setting. All right, there's no reason you can't do it out there. Green screen is a useful tool if you have to, but try to avoid using it. A, because it's somewhat untruthful, right? We're almost deceiving our viewers in a way, and we never want to do that. And number two, it's a lot of work. You have to get your lighting just so, and you have to do your editing and your production just so. It's so much better if you can just do it when you shoot it. Any other questions?
How do you know when the background gets too distracting?
You'll know. You will just know. And the reason you'll know is because your focus will start going that way. It just naturally happens. And if that happens, then you change it. Yeah, it'll just be one of those things you're like, this isn't working. Yeah. Let's take two more. Oh, you've got it already. Okay.
Like, so if you're like doing it and you have a blurry background, what if you want to like, there's like a scene going on in the background and you want to like show that? Can you like take the blur to the person and then show the background?
That's called a rack focus when you change it from one thing to another. You can, but my suggestion would be to use B-roll and cover the interview. So if your interviewee is talking about how fun the monkey bars are, I would want to see them for like 5 or 6 seconds talking about it, and then I would put video on top of them so we can see the monkey bars.
I know, but like, oh God, what was I gonna say? Like if you're like trying to like if you're like doing not like an interview but like a movie or something, and you're the like person is like ignoring something, and then you want to like show it on the movie, shouldn't you like
if it's natural and if it's happening, if your subject is stopping and paying attention, then sure, that's okay. But I would advise zooming out instead of trying to change your focus, right? Especially because you guys have a lot of these little cameras and you don't have control of the focus. Yeah. Any other questions about that? All right, I'll take one more. You've asked a few, so I'm going to go to her, okay? And poor Mr. Bentley is going to have to run through the crowd. Oh! There you go.
Once you like shoot a video, and if something like it messes up in the background, can you like take the video and edit like what has gone in the background?
The question is, what happens if something goes wrong in the background? What do you do about it? My suggestion is you just cover it with video. If you want to still use what your person is saying, but you don't want to see what's happening, just put some video on top of it. That's what B-roll is for. Cool? All right. So, we talked about shot composition with interviews. The rule of thirds and wide, medium, tight, the rule of thirds almost goes out the window when you're shooting B-roll, when you're shooting just video, okay? But that's not to say you can't use it as a guide. I mean, you can put things in frames, right? Like say, for instance, I'm getting a ground shot of a building, right? My camera's on the ground down here and I've got the building in front. It's kind of cool to have like a blade of grass off to this side a little bit, or maybe, you know, a fire hydrant or something here, and then we see the building, especially if it's a story about fire or something like that. It's okay to kind of use that as a guide, but wide, medium, tight is what I want you guys to think about when you're shooting your B-roll. And that is for two reasons. Number one, it gives you safeties when you're editing. It almost kind of, we call it editing in the camera. All right, so if you have to edit a project really fast, especially if we end up going into this career like I am, sometimes you guys have, what, like a week to work on a video, maybe 2 weeks or so? We do like 2 a day. Yeah. So sometimes I've got to work really fast. And by doing this, by starting wide and then zooming in a little bit more and then zooming in a little bit more, it gives me flexibility and I can edit faster because the shots are all there. And number two, it gives you sequencing and continuity. And we'll talk about that in a little bit, but I want to show you why it's so important to get so much B-roll. And always, 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 unless there's a great reason not to, use your tripod. All right, I've seen so many videos where we're kind of shaky, and I feel like I'm in a Blair Witch movie, and we're just running around, and all right, it's not, no, the teachers know, they get it. All right, it's not necessary. I get sick, I've got cameras moving all over the place. Use your tripod. Put it down, press record, and walk away for 10 seconds. And always hold your shots for 10 seconds. You may only use 3 or 4 seconds, but hold them, because when you press record, your camera shakes a little bit. You press stop, your camera shakes a little bit. So if we record 10 seconds, but only use the middle 5, we're great. Make sense? Okay. And if I am shooting a story that's going to be 1 minute and 30 seconds on the air, take a stab at how much video I actually shoot. An hour, hour and a half. I range between 30 minutes and 50 minutes, somewhere in there. Tons of B-roll. And this next story I'm going to show you gives you an example of, I'm going to move this back over here, why it's so important to have all that B-roll. Because you need that many shots. Where'd it go? There are a few, shall we say, expectations you may have when visiting a prison. Certain things you'd expect to see, maybe even hear. But if you plan on visiting the old Folsom State Prison, lock your expectations away.
We have ink pens, pencils, sharpeners, highlighters, colored pencils.
It's almost like a chain gang, but these inmates are much happier than those building a railroad, because they say they're building the future.
We're providing school supplies for underprivileged kids.
Along with 80 others, Joel Silas III spends 8 hours a day, not in his cell, but on this production line, making tote bags filled with everything schools and parents can no longer afford.
Our production line is producing 1,500 tote bags an hour. A lot of kids out there that can't afford the little essential things like sharpeners and glue sticks, they're getting provided for them.
The totes are a project of K2 College.
These guys are putting together grade 6 to 12 kits.
And a brainchild of Benito Delgado Olson.
School districts love it, teachers love it, parents love it. And the students, I mean, it's like Christmas in September when they get them.
What they get is a $65 kit for every low-income student in a chosen school district. Right now, donations mainly go to the Bay Area, but Benito hopes to expand through the state, then the country.
Where there's a lot of people in school districts, there's a need. And, I mean, that's where this program came from, out of necessity.
The project came to prison because of a manpower issue. Even with dedicated volunteers, Benito could not get all these made. So he turned to lawmakers, and this was their solution. It's an everybody wins scenario, especially their children. They get a kit too.
Because a lot of their dads are incarcerated, so they're not able to provide for their kids.
For Joel, he's also giving back to the community he took from.
What crime did I commit to get here? I committed a robbery.
Now he is robbing no one and giving to the poor, exceeding all expectations anyone might have. At the Folsom State Prison, Nick Monacelli, News 10.
Joel says by the beginning of
Okay, so We talked about rule of thirds. You saw that was used in there. We talked about wide, medium, and tight and the importance of getting all those types of shots, right? And you saw why you have to get as much B-roll as possible because you want to use as many cool shots as you can. You notice that none of the shots were moving around. Everything was stuck and not moving, right? The interview with Joel Silas, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Why did you have like people when you were interviewing that guy that you were talking to? Why did you have people in front of the camera?
So the question was, why did we interview Joel Silas III with all those people in the way? It was a creative choice that I made. And I did it for a reason that we talk about called don't take people away from the action. I could pull Joel aside and interview him away from the assembly line, or I could interview him while he's working on the assembly line, right? And I wanted to interview him that way because, frankly, I thought the shot was cool. And secondly, just because the way that was set up, it was pretty tough for me to get a camera right close to him as he was still working. Also, you heard one of those sound bites from Benito at the beginning. He was walking around kind of pointing out that this is what they're doing right now. That was, he was walking and showing us what was going on. As much as you can, interview people while the action is happening. They'll give you much better sound bites than pulling them away and taking them out of their comfort zone. We have a microphone somewhere.
What I noticed is you end up separating them as to their character or their role. By
Say that
keeping
again?
them- you separate them as far as their role and what they're doing. By keeping them in the assembly line, you don't all of a sudden think that he's in charge by separating them. You actually see him as one of the few that are in there.
Right.
And then, of course, the Benito guy is, you can tell. So in other words, without using words, you literally played it out by
Exactly.
where they're standing,
Right,
what they're doing.
yeah. And that's another thing we want to talk about is your video shots and composition have content of their own. They tell their own stories even without your words. That's a great example of it. Another one is, who remembers the wide shot from the very top that kind of swept and showed you all that was happening? All right, what did that microphone, here we go. What did that tell you?
Well, it showed us all the materials they had and showed us how many people there were and what they were doing.
Showed you how massive the operation was, right? Did I have to say anything about how massive it was? Did I have to say how big it was? That video tells it on its own, right? Almost always, wide shots equal context, all right? Almost always.
Yeah, teacher voice, I can do it.
Oh, well, the cameras in the back won't pick you up, though.
Oh, okay. One thing that, to me, because you have a preconceived notion, fellow in prison, having that angle humanized him because it was more of a personal conversation that was going on instead of, here you are, you're on the spot. So I enjoyed that very much.
Not only that, but that long pause that he had before he told us what, it added a human element, didn't it? You didn't see him as a prisoner anymore. You almost saw him as a person for a second, didn't you? There's that emotion part again.
Feel for him because he obviously had a pause.
Right.
Because you could only put yourself as to what he's trying to feel and put across, but yet.
Exactly. And also, there was a theme in that. I don't know if you picked up on it. At the beginning, we talked about there are expectations when you visit a prison. Jail cells and all that happening. And then we talked about lock your expectations away. It's kind of a twist on, when you go to prison, you get locked up, right? You can use creative things like that in your stories. And at the end, we brought expectations back again. I did that with the band. Right. And one other thing, we talked about natural sound, how important it is. How much natural sound did that piece have? Packaging tape and rulers and all this stuff happening. And when we talk about natural sound, I told you that it makes you see it and you hear it and you kind of feel like you're there. Did you really get a feeling like you were there because you hear all this stuff going on? That's how important natural sound is. And that's why when I log my tapes, my video, I go through and say, great sound of packaging tape, great sound of rulers falling, great sound of bag being ripped away. And that way I can actually plug them into my puzzle, my script as I'm writing it. Otherwise, if I don't do that, I'm going to forget to do it. I'm not going to know where the shots are. It's going to take me longer to edit. I'm going to get lazy and not want to do it. Just write it out.
do you write your script after you shoot the video? Like, why do you write the script after you shoot the video? Because it's already done.
Well, I write my script after I shoot the video because I don't know what I have. I don't know what my natural sound is. I don't know what the sound bites are. I don't know what the video is of. So I can't write my script until I know what I've got, right? It's like those puzzle pieces. You have to know what pieces of the puzzle you have before you can make your puzzle.
And I saw that you only did like some of the things they were putting in. You didn't do all of them. Like, is that like a tool to you? You don't do all of it?
It's a tool because, again, it's see dog, say dog. I don't have to tell you about the protractors and the pencils and the rulers because you see them, right? That's exactly what that tool is. And one example that you also saw in there that I've got another story to show you is about pacing. Who thought that that story was really fast? But did you feel like it was fast? Did you feel any kind of rush going in there? No, right, you didn't, because there was pacing. It was busy, it was hectic, but it wasn't rushed, all right? And that's an editing trick. Now the next one is almost the exact opposite of that. And this is a tool to consider while you're editing. And also think about it while you're shooting, because you can get quicker shots. You can get different types of video to kind of portray. So this is a story about people calling 911 because they have flu-like symptoms. A couple of years ago, the system was horribly abused because people were calling 911. The story was that the system was simply overloaded. So what does that mean? If they're overloaded, they're busy. So you want the story to feel like it's busy and things are moving, right? Edit that way.
All right, ready? Yep. All right.
They come with a familiar sound and usually a comforting sight, knowing the help you need right this instant is here.
All right, dear. I'm going to listen to your lungs, okay?
But firefighters and paramedics are feeling a little used and abused.
San Juan's Medic 41 route to facility code 2.
Knowing many of the calls they run really aren't necessary.
One of the things we're experiencing now is the onset of flu-like symptoms.
You heard right. Callers calling in wanting a ride for swine flu.
A lot of those calls can be handled by a family member with an automobile.
At Station 41, Captain Jeff Vitti and his team only have one fire engine and one ambulance. So while a patient goes from point A to point B, another might be facing a real emergency.
It's frustrating when we see people using the 911 system inappropriately because, you know, perhaps when they're getting transported to the hospital with their flu symptoms, someone's having a heart attack and the ambulance can't get there in time. IT fracture, intertrochanteric fracture.
Dr. Keith Rosing has spent more than 3 decades practicing medicine. What really makes the MD mad is patients thinking an ambulance means immediate care.
That's the type of thing you should come to the emergency department on your own and
context,
get in line like everybody else and get looked at.
The simple fact is a patient who drives in or rides in will be seen in the same order. All dialing 911 does is tires these guys out when they should be preparing to save a life.
We keep morale as high as we can in this station considering the call loads we deal with.
See what I mean by pacing? Felt much faster, didn't it? All because of just it was tighter and quicker editing. All right, your editing style will also help tell your story. And also, notice I got a lot of great natural sound in there from like the doctor when the camera was far away. That's a wireless microphone. It's a wireless lav, just like I'm wearing right now. If you can afford them, if you can convince your principals to buy one for you, these are an amazing tool. You can keep this on somebody. In fact, that's exactly what I do. When I go to a shoot, a lot of people will sit down and interview somebody and then say, okay, we need to get some B-roll now. Go back to whatever it is you were doing. It's kind of awkward, right? Like say we're doing a story about a mom for whatever reason, and we go to her house and she's there, she's cleaning up dinner. Hey, can you stop what you're doing and sit down? Oh, okay, sure. So we sit down and we do the interview and we've got her mic'd up and everything. Okay, it's done. Just go back to what you're doing. Oh, okay, are you gonna film me? Oh, all right, okay. Or, hey Nancy, you know, Channel 10 here, just keep what you're doing. We're gonna put this microphone in just so we can see and hear what's going on, but go back to what you're doing. We're gonna mic you up and keep watching your distance. Oh, okay, sounds good. Great video of her scrubbing, and we hear it all, and she, oh, I can't get this grease off this plate. You know, you hear all these things. Great, Nancy, thank you so much. We're ready for you. She comes over here, sits down, does the interview, and now you're done. Just reverse things, and it's amazing how much more natural things will turn out if you just kind of flip your logic you automatically want to think, okay, let's do the interview first. Try not to. Interview techniques. How many of you, when you're going to go out on your shoot, have a list of questions for the person that you want to talk to? Raise your hands. Shame on you. It's good to have an idea. It's good to have a list of things that you know you want to discuss, but it's so awkward. Erica, come back, sit down here for a second. Erica, what's your major at Sac State?
Journalism.
How long have you been there?
Since 2010.
Do you like school?
It's cool.
Sorry.
Oh, sorry.
Erica, what's your major at Sac State?
Journalism.
You like it over there?
I love it.
How long have you been there?
Since 2010.
Is it a good program?
It has its highs and lows.
Yeah. Why did you want to become a journalist?
I was in a video production class at my high school, and I just fell in love with broadcasting.
Right. It's kind of a cool job, isn't it?
It's really cool.
Yeah. You see how having a list of questions kind of constrains you a little bit, and it makes the interview much more awkward? She's a pro. But just to have an idea of what you want to talk about and have a conversation. Thanks. Yep. Interviews are a conversation. Interviews are not interviews. All right? And you'll know the difference. And you'll go back when you go look at your videotapes and realize, boy, this just doesn't feel right. I mean, I got the stuff, but the answers were kind of forced and it was almost felt like it's scripted. If you just have a conversation, what happens is you make the subject open up to you. They get more comfortable with you because you're not a reporter, you're just a friend. You're just talking, right? And when they start to get that comfort with you, they'll start to open up more. They'll give you better sound bites, and they may even tell you more than they would have if you were reading off a list of questions. So have an idea of what you want to talk about, maybe even bullet point some ideas, but don't write question 1, question 2, question 3. Because a lot of times, come back up here for a second. Erica, where are you living?
Oh, just near the campus in Sacramento, off J Street.
You don't live on campus?
No, I do not. I moved out of the dorms after I was a freshman.
Why?
It was really expensive to live on campus.
Oh, okay. Now, what would have happened if my list said, where do you live? What's your major? I would have skipped the fact that I just found out it's too expensive to live on campus. Adapt your interview, right? Just have a conversation with somebody. And your minds are always inquisitive. Ask the questions that just pop into your mind, because I promise you 90% of the time, the questions that pop into your mind are the same questions that are popping into your viewer's mind. So if you just sit there and have a conversation with somebody, it may go a little longer, but you'll get much better material. Questions? None? Come on, guys. Alrighty. When you're shooting video, let's say we're covering a story about a building being torn down, right? It's an old historic building. It has a lot of character. A lot of people are very upset it's being torn down. It's an old church and it could be salvaged, but the city decided they want to bulldoze it and put up a Walmart, right? So we're going to go cover this thing. So we're there. How many of you would have your cameras ready? We're going to press record and we're going to see that wrecking ball hit the building for the very first time. We're going to record that, right? Well, why wouldn't we record that? Who wants to answer that? Why wouldn't we record that?
Because you're against the wrecking ball and you kind of want to see the expression on people's faces. More so.
I don't know about the against the wrecking ball part, because as journalists, we don't take sides, right? There's two sides to every story. But you're absolutely right. That reaction, that priceless reaction from somebody seeing the wrecking ball hit that building that they don't want to be torn down, is only going to happen once. It's going to happen when that thing hits the building for the first time and it goes kaboom. What the boom, right? Where's the boom? Did I change my phrase? All right. I do have to write it down. That wrecking ball is going to hit that building over and over and over and over again. You've got plenty of opportunities to get that video, but only one shot to get the reaction. Reaction is more important than the action. Write it down. Reaction is more important than the action. And why is that? Because stories are about people, not things. I want to emphasize one more thing, and that's something that a lot of us actually have difficulty with, and that is thinking outside the box. All right? School teachers don't have as much trouble with this because you're creative folks already and you have a lot of patience. But it is okay to be different. It is okay to try something new. It is okay to try something new and fail at it. That's fine. I encourage you to try something new. For two reasons. A, because your job or your assignment will be so much more fun. Number two, because your viewers will probably stick around and watch you. At the end of the day, that's our goal, right? We want people to watch what we're doing. We're doing it for ourselves, but we want people to see it, right? So, it is absolutely okay to try something different. I tried something. I think it worked. Others didn't. You can be the judge. Go to bed for candy. Decorations are still going on.
Electrical machine that has wires and little spots of electricity run up in it.
Did you say a machine that shoots out electricity? That doesn't sound safe.
Oh, no, it's very safe, but we don't want them touching it.
Don't touch it, no. Right? But what are the rules here? What's the age limit? How soon can the candy come?
I see somebody over here.
I would make it my mission to leave here with some sugar. Trick or treat?
Okay, yeah. You guys are a little early.
What kind of candy do you have for me? Trick or treat.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, Nick from Channel 10.
Microphone?
Well, I'm from Channel 10. I keep them with me all the time. I actually sleep with it too. I can keep it next to me on my pillow. In my quest to find candy, I'm coming up short, but I do have one working thought. I think that thing ate all of it.
Sources tell me that this house is the unfriendly house on Halloween. I'm kind of hoping they don't answer the door. Okay, that's long enough. Let's go.
You can make me say it?
Yeah.
Trick or treat. There's still no candy here.
It's too early. Come at 5. We're open at 5.
Okay. So, I'm learning one thing here on 45th Street. The people refuse to give away their precious candy before the sun goes down. So, my next tactic is pure desperation. Hi there! Trick or treat! Trick or treat! Trick or treat! Trick or treat?
Neither.
Failure. My desperation has turned into embarrassing reporter failure. But hey, here's the upside. My misfortune is your guide. On All Hallows Eve, the best costumes, the best decorations, the best candy, they all live on 45th.
Hey, listen, 600, 700, 800 people. We have to be prepared.
And you feed all of them?
We do.
All right, what do you guys think? Liked it? Who's going trick-or-treating on 45th next year? So the assignment was go do a story about this street who has all these kids. Well, we decided to do something different with it, and the viewers actually really liked it. It turned out pretty good. But it's an example that it's okay to be different, and it's okay to try something new. It's okay to, on stories that aren't taboo or not going to hurt anybody's feelings, it's okay to do something like that. And I heard a lot of people laughing. That's an emotion, isn't it? And you'll remember that story. You might go tell somebody about it, and you might even go look on our website and show whoever it is when you get home, right? Emotion is something that people remember. And that's what your goal is as you know, when you're working on this, you want people to remember what it is you're doing. Okay, my final lesson for you is it's also another thing we have trouble with. Turning the problem into the story. So many times we'll go on an interview or we'll go someplace and the story didn't turn out the way we thought it was going to, or the person decided not to talk, or just something went wrong, all right? How many of us would give up and start over and move on to the next assignment, right? Okay. It's okay to turn that into the story. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. You know, if we're doing a story about the librarian who was losing her job because of budget cuts, and we had an interview scheduled with the principal, and then he decided, you know what, no, I don't want to talk about this, say it. There's nothing wrong with saying that. It's the truth. They may not like you because of it, but that's okay. Now, some of you have to walk a fine line there because you need your job, but it's okay to do that. And the other thing is, I want you to use the tools that are at your disposal. Elementary schools are chock full of goodness, all right? You know this. I just don't know if you know how to utilize it. Well, we do. Go ahead.
What about middle schools?
Middle schools, high schools, it's all good. What I'm saying is use what you know. And what we knew is that A, kids are cute. Little kids, right? Kids are cute. Number two, kids nowadays have their iPods and their fancy phones and their Googles and their, yeah, exactly. You guys have your technology, right? But us old timers, right? We didn't have it, and there's some cool stuff out there. Use what's at your disposal, and you got a great story.
Well, you may not realize how quickly technology has changed what we buy.
That is unless you show kids today what we were using just a few years ago. On News 10's Nick Monacelli did just that, and it made for some priceless moments.
The mission was simple: dust off those old devices we were in awe of so many decades ago. We were able to dig up an old car phone, a record player, a Walkman, a reel-to-reel recorder, a rotary phone, record, a typewriter, an hourglass, and a Polaroid camera. Then line up all that old tech that back in the day was worth hundreds of dollars and just wait for priceless responses.
It's like a old phone. See all the dirt and like stuff in the buttons?
All these second and third graders are from the Boys and Girls Club at Edward Kemble Elementary in Sacramento. None of them know about our hidden cameras.
A DVD player? Like the teacher. It's a phone, it's weird. I know, these are one of the weird phones. See, look there should be an old camera right here. Yeah, and you press it right there to tape. Like in the army or something. Like if they want to send letters, they would type it like that. Wait, look it. Every time you touch one, it moves. Let's go quick. Jacob! Did anybody hear that?
Oh yes, we heard that, Jacob. All right, guys, what do you think?
I was thinking I could get a genie out of here.
Wait a giant disc?
It's called a record.
Oh yeah, a record! I should have known of a midtime rush.
And who do you think would use something like this back in the old days?
I think God.
That's a cassette tape.
Oh yeah, cause it's right here. It's right here.
This whole thing is called a Walkman.
A Walkman? It don't even walk.
It doesn't walk.
But can it be the man?
It could be a walk woman if you want it to be. I don't know why it's called a Walkman.
It's messed up.
It's messed up. So you clearly are the female empowerment of this group then. What about a typewriter?
A typewriter?
Does that sound right to you? No? Typewriter.
Oh, because it writes as it's doing this, and it writes on this.
You guys say, oh, like you know exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah, we do.
Are you sure?
We're smart.
So you put paper in it.
Does it have a ribbon?
The ribbon's right here.
Oh, man.
So you knew about the ribbon?
Yes.
How'd you know about the ribbon?
Hey. You like put it out right here, and then you click it, and it comes out right here. See? A sharpener. A sharpener.
It's not a pencil sharpener.
It's a camera.
By far, the majority of them knew what the Polaroid camera was. The phones were a giveaway. Everything else was a guessing game. And for those of you feeling old just by watching this, take comfort knowing that in about 30 years, their kids might not know what an iPod is.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Let's go. I want to put my whole face on there.
In Sacramento, Nick Monacelli, News 10.
You know, and technology does keep changing, as Nick said. I mean, 30 years from now, they'll be looking at an iPod like, oh, what's this? Ancient technology, this stuff that we think is so cool today.
I know. When you look back over time, cassette tapes, the time that they were popular seems like that now.
Yeah.
It kind of went from records. I mean, cassette tapes, yeah. And Walkman, that was adorable.
Good
It doesn't
fun.
even walk.
And the hourglass. I think I could get a genie out of this. I mean, it looked like a magic lamp. Yeah,
Fantastic.
Good stuff. By the way, we posted the unedited hidden camera video on news10.net. You might want to check.
All right, so just an example of, there are hidden treasures everywhere. We talked at the beginning about how everybody has a story. Sometimes all you have to do is just look around and realize that you've got great characters. We talked about how important characters are all around you, and just know how to use them and know how to just make great stories.
How did you choose your career of doing this? How did you get passionate to doing this?
When I was very young, in junior high school, I got involved in some video production, which then led to a part-time job, which then led to a very rinky-dink type television show on public access, which then led to another part-time job, which eventually turned into a full-time job at a station, which I was actually born and raised in Detroit. What? You from Detroit too?
I'm not from Detroit, but both my parents and my grandparents are from there.
Okay, we're good people. Yeah, so the career is a lot of fun. It has its ups and downs. I mean, I obviously love what I do. I get to do some great things. I get to go on some great trips. Obviously, with our Kings coverage, a lot of you probably know, at least the teachers know, that we had a big to-do with whether or not the Kings were staying in town. So Brian, May, and I traveled the country several times. New York 7 times, Orlando, Las Vegas, Houston, Dallas. We were all over the place. So this job definitely has its perks. You get to see a lot of things. I tell people you've got a backstage pass to life, kind of. You get it behind the scenes. You get to look at a lot of things that, frankly, you guys don't get to. But there are the downsides, too. I do have to do a lot of things that I don't necessarily want to. Sometimes I have to go to places that I really don't want to. Sometimes I have to go knock on doors that I don't want to. But, you take the good with the bad, and it's a great career. Yeah, bud.
So let's say on the librarian thing, on the budget cuts, and the principal didn't want to talk about it. How do you say that, we asked the opinion of the principal, but they rejected our... How do you say that without making the principal seem like a total... Yeah.
Choose your words nicely. You can be tactful while still being truthful. And the way to do that would say, we tried reaching out to our principal and he declined to talk to us. You don't have to say he refused to talk to us. Again, you're telling the truth. But there are some times where if he refuses to talk to you, you can follow up. Well, why not? And if he says, well, because it's a sensitive subject, then you can say, Principal Jones decided not to talk to us. He said it was too sensitive to talk about right now. There are ways around that.
You know how you did that thing with the little kids? How would you do that in a middle school way? How would you get their reactions to stuff?
You want to steal my idea? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
The same way. All that was a couple of cameras that were, I wouldn't say they were hidden, they were just out of plain sight. And when you put small kids or even middle school kids in a room with things that are unfamiliar, they're going to focus in and kind of ignore what's going around them.
Things we're able to do.
I have a suggestion.
Go ahead.
I've been trying to get them
will you pass the microphone? So.
I've been trying to get them do one on kind of the opposite of social norms.
Uh-huh.
So when you go in and you normally greet someone and you shake their hand. Well, what would be the opposite of that? You totally, smother them and hug them, or, when you talk to someone, usually you give them their personal space. Well, what would they do, or how would they react when you came right up to them? Or when you're, like, we have an elevator. When you're in the elevator, normally you kind of have your space. Well, what if you, like, really got in their space? How would they react? I can't quite convince them to try that.
You can't convince the students to do it? Well, first of all, it shouldn't take much, especially after seeing that, it shouldn't take much convincing, because reactions are amazing on tape, right? It's amazing to get candid moments on camera because it makes great television. Yeah. So, and be upfront about it. Say, we're gonna try and experiment. We're gonna invade your personal space, but don't tell them how. Or we're gonna try a little experiment with handshakes, but don't tell them that you're going to hug them instead of give them a handshake. Right. Yeah. Who else? Mr. Bentley. Right here. Okay.
How do you guys...
Can you speak up? The air conditioner turned on again. I'll come over here.
How do you guys deal with annoying noises in the background?
Like that? The question was, how do you deal with annoying noises in the background? Well, especially in the news business, most of the time you don't have a choice and you just have to deal with it. Or you can work around it. I mean, there's... Like, for instance, if we're doing a story about recess and the kids are just so loud and you can't get the interview audio to sound clean enough, and it's just, take them around a corner. You can still keep them outside or take them further away from the playground. There are almost always a mitigation. You just have to think outside of the box. But there are ways to fix that. And then on live television, how do you deal with annoying people? You just tune them out. It's difficult, but you do it. Or, like happened to me, if you're in Oakland and the A's just lost in the playoff series, but the fans are still excited, and they completely mob you and force you off screen, just politely walk away and keep talking. But explain what's going on. It's,
that video. Do you have that one?
I did not keep that one up for you. Who's next? Over here.
This is like kind of a random question, but how do you guys make your voice so perfect?
Voice so perfect.
Like all the reporters talk like.
The question is, how do you make your voice so perfect?
You're just like those reporters on that video too are so normal.
Well, it comes with practice. It really does. And what I can tell you is, first of all, and I didn't bring this one either, but if I were ever to show you my first story, it's awful. It's awful. It takes practice. And most importantly, it takes being comfortable with your conversational style. Right? I told you the interviews are a conversation, but the entire story is just a conversation. You've got to be just natural with it. All right, who's next?
Right here, over here.
Hey, buddy.
How do you find a story?
Well, so many different ways. Sometimes a story comes to you. Sometimes somebody calls you. Sometimes we get a press release being told about something. The majority of these nice, fun stories are emails from people saying, hey, you wouldn't believe what's going on today, or, and that's a tip for all of you. Don't be afraid to call or email the news station. We all see those emails. So if you've got something really cool going on in the school, email us, and we'll all see it, and we'll see what we can do about it.
So has your perspective on how you broadcast, has it changed at all?
My perspective evolves daily. It really does. My philosophy that people are more important than things is something that has kind of grown with me as I go. And it's important to keep an open mind because things change all the time. I will tell you that our philosophy on social media has changed drastically. From the beginning, we thought the web and Facebook was the enemy. Now we use it on a daily basis to help us.
Does every person edit their own segment? Or?
The industry is changing. There are some of us who are capable of shooting everything and editing on our own. Some are learning how to, some can't learn how to. But the industry is leaning towards trying to get everybody to multitask and be able to do everything. It doesn't mean you have to do it all the time, though. Like when you're on live television, if I'm on live, I'm obviously not shooting my own shot. If I'm in a breaking news situation and we're running around trying to figure out what's happening and I'm talking to the police and they're shooting video, you go do it in teams. But then there are great feature stories. I think almost all of them that I showed you today, except for this one and maybe another one, was shot all on my own. I edited all on my own. Okay, one more, right, Mr. Bentley? Okay. That's you? No? Anybody else? Okay.
Don't you always want to edit your own stuff because you have an idea of how you want the end product to go, and someone might not necessarily follow your same style or perspective or what you want it to look like as a final product?
No. And I say that because if I shot the story on my own, then yes, I want to edit it because I know what the style is. But if I worked with somebody to shoot it, A, I've built them a roadmap in the script on how to put it together, but B, they have an opinion too. And they have an idea of how the story should look, so we collaborate. And then we come together and say, that worked or that didn't, let's tweak that. And I'll be honest, I mean, I'm blown away with sometimes I didn't even think of doing something and the photographer did. I'm like, wow, that was really good. You know? One more?
You know,
you get one?
May I ask a question?
Sure.
So what is the time frame that you look for a story length? Because the one touching story with the wedding, that was like 5 minutes and something.
Yeah.
What is the typical, or what length do you shoot for?
The typical story is 1 minute and 30 seconds, the $1.30, with 30 seconds in the front for introductions and reporter, and then some time at the end to wrap it all up. But these features, these things that are heart-tugging or have great characters or have good emotions, we let them go because it's great television. And, you know, you can't buy great television, you make it. So we do what we can with it. Thank you so much for coming, everybody.